All right, I think we are live. How's it going, Scott?
It's going well, thanks.
All right, and I think Norm was just working on joining us here, having a little bit of Christmas time elf mischief going on, and seems like there's some technical difficulties, but we'll get through it. Worst case, it'll just be two little elves instead of three today, but yeah, we'll make it work. All righty. Go ahead and share my screen. All right, are you seeing it, Scott?
Yes, it's clear as a bell.
All right, perfect. Well, I know while we're waiting on Norm to join us, our third little elf, I figure we can go ahead and dive on in and just talk a little bit about a Christmas miracle with value stream management. So I don't know if you're familiar with the story of the shoemaker and the elves. Are you, Scott?
I kind of remember it back from when I was a child, yes.
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, it's one of those things where actually for this particular webinar, I was not super familiar with it. I know it's something that I dug into it once I heard that this is what we were going to be doing, and it sounds like a very interesting story with a very heartfelt, just a very heartfelt message. And of course, that heartfelt message is very centered on value stream management, which I didn't quite catch when I was reading it the first time, but through multiple other readings, I could see there was a lot of value stream management stuff in there. It kind of caught me off guard, but I'm guessing that little children, when they hear this story, they come out of it knowing a lot more about VSM than when they came in.
They're lucky kids.
They're very lucky kids. So just to kind of get things kicked off, in case there's folks in the audience that have never heard this story. So we start with a little shoemaker. And this shoemaker was trying to create shoes, but he realized that he had a bit of a constraint. He had limited resources that he had to work with. And of course, his livelihood was based on selling the shoes. And it came to the point where he only had one piece of cloth left. He wasn't able to have the material to be able to create extra shoes. He was kind of in trouble. He would require a Christmas miracle in order to save his business and in order to feed his family. And he didn't know what to do. And as we take a look at this, this shoemaker, we realize that with one piece of cloth, with no money and with no resources, he was in a lot of trouble. And in addition to that, we realize that the shoemaker doesn't really have a good grip of value stream management. What do you think, Scott?
No, definitely not.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't even know what his value stream looks like. He doesn't know how to use what he has in order to maximize productivity, in order to maximize quality. And, quite frankly, he was completely oblivious to anything that could be affecting his business. I mean, I can only imagine that the supply chain issues going on right now and inflation and things like that are probably making it pretty hard to make shoes, especially when you only got one little piece of cloth to work with, right?
Absolutely.
But there are three little elves that were able to change his life and his business forever. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Now, how did they do it? As we think about these three elves and just really their ability to help him, it all centers on value stream management. And as we take a look, there's three elf codes of Christmas. That's to spread Christmas cheer by singing loud for all to hear. Everyone can be on the nice list, and every day is Christmas. Which one of those codes is your favorite, Scott? Which one do you like the best?
I like the nice list.
Why is that?
Because good things happen to those that are nice, right?
Yeah, unless you need to power something, then that coal might come in handy.
Exactly.
Oh, looks like Norm dropped in at just the perfect time, like a Christmas miracle.
That's a Christmas miracle.
Perfect.
It's the Santa of future Christmases here. How's that?
I like it. Yeah, so I was just asking Scott which of the three elf codes of Christmas is his favorite. There's spread Christmas cheer by singing loud for all to hear. everyone can be on the nice list, and every day is Christmas. So do you have a particular favorite, Norm?
Well, one of my favorite movies is Elf. And, if the credo of Elf is every day is Christmas, this is awesome. So we'll go with number 3.
I get it. Well, then I'll go ahead and say that my favorite is Spreading Christmas Cheer by singing loud for all to hear.
Uh-oh. So
just always fun to be able to sing. I won't break anyone's eardrums here by trying it now, but interestingly enough, I don't know if you caught this, but each of those 3 elf codes actually subscribes and is very similar to one of the 3 steps in value stream management. There's C, which maps up to visibility. There's data for metrics, which maps up to measure. And there's automate, which, of course, if we automate it and get efficient enough, then every day can be Christmas. So, of course, step 1, as we think about singing loud for all to hear, we have to shout from the rooftops what this shoemaker's value stream looks like, right? So what we see here is he has a pretty inefficient process today. I mean, if we take a look at some of the things that he needs to do, I mean, it just seems like a bit of a mess. I mean, if he gets all the way to processing and waits for the sun to come out and then realize, it doesn't fit, he has to go all the way back to the cutting method. If he gets to the final expectation, or the final inspection, I should say, and he realizes, it's not quite the right size, the customer's not going to be happy. The customer's going to have hurt feet at Christmas, which is not okay. Then he has to go all the way back to square one. I mean, this seems like a pretty inefficient feedback loop. And on top of all of that, the closest thing he has to measurement, he's just taking notes in his little journal. I mean, that's not a very effective value stream, would you say?
Sounds like he's going out. No wonder why he's going out of business. He's struggling. We got to help him here.
I know, right? Well, then if we think about step 2, we have where he's got to measure the value stream. We think about if he can measure, who's on the nice list and who needs a little help to get on the nice list, because everyone can be on the nice list. There's some ways that we can measure it. And likewise, with his shoemaking ability, we can measure some of those processes as well. Do you want to walk through some of these metrics, Norm?
Absolutely. Beginning with the cycle time. I mean, this poor guy, he's up there, he's preparing the material, he's having to cut everything out himself, then he's sewing it, and then he's got to put everything together, assemble it, and finish it. It's like, whoa. And then, but what if there's a bottleneck there? It's like, okay, as he's preparing, he's cutting it, what if the scissors break? It's like, he's got to take that out. It's like, that'll slow things down. What if the needle breaks from the sewing, or he runs out of thread? All these things are just slowing him down. He's probably like, poor guy's bald anyway, but no offense, Santa's elf number 3 there, Scott. But he's pulling his hair out or pulling his beard out. These are the things you do. So, but it's like, okay, he has no idea what his lead time is. He's getting a lot of orders. I mean, this guy is popular in the village. They love this guy, love his shoes. I mean, he's been around forever. But the older he gets, he's not as fast and efficient as he used to be. So it's now taking him a lot longer to take the order, to put the order together, and to deliver it. And it's just like the whole thing. And then he's got to distribute it, right? And then there's this new term that they use in the village. It's called take time. It's almost like it's half talking and half taking. And so that it's that elf word of TAKT, time. It's a special word only the elves really understand, but the shoemakers. So trying to get through this area. And then ultimately the throughput variation, sometimes of the year he's not as busy. He's able to make the shoots a lot easier. Back to school time, he's got his system all together. But man, at Christmas time, this guy is just working to the bone. So what do you do? What's the next step?
Well, at that point, we've got to automate the value stream. So we took a look a little bit at what his value stream looks like, realized, oh boy, there's so many inefficiencies. Then from there, we can take a look at some of the metrics that this shoemaker needs to know and this shoemaker needs to be able to measure that go beyond just simply taking notes in his journal. He's got to figure out, measurements around it. And now that we know what the value stream looks like, whether or not he's meeting his goals, which we We know he's not, but now we have a little bit of an understanding as to why. Now we can automate some of these steps, and we can start to automate some of the value stream. Do you want to talk a little bit about these steps, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the shoemaker, I mean, he's old school, right? I mean, he's been building shoes by hands. I mean, that's part of the lore and why the villagers like his shoes so much. But there's new players in town. You know, the Grinch has come to town and he's eating his lunch, and the reason he's eating his lunch is because of the automation. You know, the Grinch has figured out that, you know, if I can increase my throughput and I have quality shoes, you know, then I'm going to be able to meet and supply the demand in the marketplace. And that's where, you know, that's where our shoemaker, Mr. Cobbler, I believe, that's where he's starting to fall down, because he's still holding to these old processes and these old methodologies, which were great at the time, which helped him grow his business, but he hasn't adapted. He hasn't transformed. And there's so many different types of automations that he can start to look at implementing. And I mean, here are just 3 of those that the elves have brought to him. I mean, the first thing is the feedback loops, right? You know, his feedback loops are going into town, talking to, you know, the villagers, and just, you know, getting that personal touch. And that's all good, but that's time consuming, right? You know, in this day and time, when you put a product out the door, whether it's internal in your value stream or whether it's external, delivering it to a client, these feedback loops have to be real time, and you have to be able to react. You know, because if you're pushing a shoe out that's the wrong color or the wrong texture or the wrong material, you need to know right away, because you don't need to go and manufacture 1,000 more shoes. You know, if there's something in the marketplace that is inhibiting your ability to actually sell those shoes. So being able to automate that feedback loop, and as well as internally, you know, when something's coming down the value stream to the next sell, being able to say, hey, you know, upstream, the cuts are off, right? In the material that you're cutting, you know, it's getting to us, and we're having excess material. So you got to have feedback loops there real time, or you end up with a lot of waste in that scenario. And that'll lead you to eliminating, you know, the inefficient steps. So some of that internal feedback loop, you know, when we're talking about worrying, frowning, and complaining, without that feedback loop, you get exactly that. You know, everybody that's downstream on that manufacturing line, you know, they're just complaining. You know, it's just you're creating, you're almost creating person bottlenecks within your value stream, because you're not giving quality internally to the next step in your manufacturing chain, and then just automating the manual steps, right? I mean, you know, the stitching, it's being able to put, you know, machine tooling in place to where you don't have, you know, even though we're the 3 elves that are helping, trust me, I'm a horrible stitcher. You know, the best way to get throughput and to get quality stitching is through building the right tools, the right machinery to be able to do that. And then the resourcing, right? You've got to bring in the right resources. And because those right resources are going to be able to help in the automation process. You know, if I look back in my days of manufacturing, I used to tell this story all the time about when you're doing Kaizens and you're doing value stream mapping exercises, TPI, transactional process improvement, you've got to bring everybody to the table to help understand how to automate steps. And one of the funniest stories, and this is a real story, you know, where actually janitor maintenance was brought into the Kaizen, and they actually found where there was a bottleneck in the automation process, because a bin on the manufacturing floor was getting full. And what was happening is when that bin was getting full, they were stopping production to be able to take that bin out and be able to throw away the waste that was being piled up in that bin. Well, the reason why nobody ever asked, but by having that janitor in the Kaizen, or having maintenance in that Kaizen, the reason why the bins were filling up are because the trash receptacle, or not trash receptacles, but the cans outside, you know, they couldn't, the service couldn't keep up, because they were only coming once a week. So things were piling up outside. So maintenance they weren't moving it, because they had nowhere to put it. So it was as simple as increasing the service and having, you know, your trash pickup come twice a week. And that, and ironically enough, helped help the production flow across the manufacturing line. So people are important to this automation process. You got to get everybody involved to understand all the steps. And then use scraps, use natural materials, right? It's finding ways to not, in that other scenario, not just throwing waste out, but how can we reuse? How can we reuse in the software manufacturing world? How do I reuse certain code? How do I reuse certain tools so that I get even more efficiency in that area?
Good. Yeah, no, those are excellent points. And I can imagine that the shoemaker probably has a lot of scraps laying around, perhaps because it's Christmas time. There might even be some licorice that he could use as shoelaces. I mean, there's so many options that the shoemaker has.
I think the best, just to touch it, just dawned on me, the best example of using scraps, Wendy's chili.
Delicious.
For those, I spent a short stint in the hospitality industry, and that's a famous story. That's how Wendy's came up with chili. They took all the leftover meat that didn't get sold, and they would put it into the chili. And they had a specific recipe that would be able to take their overages, that would just normally get thrown out. And I don't know if you had Wendy's chili, but it's not too bad.
No, not at all. And so, as we as elves start to work with this shoemaker, we realized that there was a lot that we could do to help him out and make his process more efficient. So what you can see here is the thriving value stream that we were able to help the shoemaker create. As you can see, we were able to drastically reduce the number of steps that he's having to face. We were able to help him just, get the feedback loops going a little bit earlier and help him figure out, okay, there's some machinery that you can use. You can automate some of these steps. You don't have to do all of this by hand. And then on top of that, we were able to show him how he can use real-time metrics to be able to track how much Christmas joy and sharing and caring he's able to provide to the village because of his service providing these shoes. So as you can see, this is so much more effective and so much more efficient than when he started. And so he can probably take that one little piece of cloth and all kinds of different things that he can find and resources from neighbors and perhaps even scraps from previous shoes he created in order to help drive his business forward. So what did we learn? You'll see that there's a number of life lessons here that we can take away from the story of the shoemaker, perhaps even beyond what you remember hearing when you were younger. So you can't manage what you can't see. You have to be able to visualize the value stream first and foremost. You can replace so you can remove some of the non-value added activities and replace them with value added, low or no cost activities, kind of like we saw before, where we were able to eliminate a number of the activities he had to do by adding machinery to the process. He was able to gather information to be able to make changes as he goes and be able to plan for future growth. He's got a more effective feedback loop so he can respond more effectively. And he's able to deliver what's valuable to the customer, which is a well-fitting and a comfortable pair of shoes. And we can make sure through the use of metrics that what he's doing is lining up with his goals and that he is ultimately able to measure what is critical to his shoemaking operation, both today and once he expands and, perhaps if he goes over to his neighbor's house to start making shoes, or if he builds a little shoemaking factory in his village, he'll know that he always has the 3 elves around to help him out. And then finally, he automated the flow of information. He had feedback loops, and then he can take those business outcomes, match them with the customer satisfaction. And for the first Christmas in a long time, he's able to get a good night's sleep, knowing that his value stream is much more effective and he is able to deliver the shoes that he needs to deliver in order to feed his family. So from all of us here at ConnectALL, from the 3 little elves that are on this call today, as well as from everyone in our organization, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2023. Anything you guys have to add before we sign off today?
This is a great example of just the flexibility of what value stream management can bring to any industry. So whether it's software delivery, a shoemaker, just be able to have visibility into what's taking place is so important, and to be able to respond in real time such as when you're having problems with a webinar. Go to the go-to people. I'm like, hey, can you run this? It's like, and so I can get this thing rebooted. It's be able to understand before it happens what's going on, to be able to respond to it, knowing where to go, and to do workarounds. And then it's a feedback loop. How can we do it better next time with all these things? Advanced notice, earlier prep. So it's such a, I mean, value stream management as a concept is so intuitive, but then to be able to, with the platform, integrate all the tools and everything is just an incredible next advancement in what software delivery can do. So more to come next year, that's for certain.
And then I would just leave with one note for everybody. Always remember value stream management. It is human. That's the one thing to always remember in this, is that as much automation, as much metrics, as much tooling as you put in place, what makes value stream management work is the human factor within that whole process.
100%, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you Norman and Scott for joining us here. We hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season, that you enjoy your Christmas, you enjoy your New Year, and we're excited to see you come 2023. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
And to all, a good night.
Cheers.
Cheers.